And I threw my hands up in the air and I screamed, yes. And he goes, go, go, go. Pooh. And it was like one of the most exhilarating moments of my entire life.
Someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose.
Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. You are not alone.
There are often times in our lives when we're confronted with seemingly impossible tasks, but we also know that on the other side of those obstacles, growth occurs. Sometimes that can be a career change. Other times it's trying to overcome a fear of heights, or perhaps it's a physical challenge that pushes your body and mind beyond limits which we thought were possible. Which brings me to today's guest, Army veteran and America's #1 firewalking instructor, Dave Albin. Dave has walked through infernos many times in his life, real and metaphorical, and he's been helping others do the same for over 20 years, first with Tony Robbins and now with his company, Firewalk Productions. Dave, welcome to the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Danny, thank you so much for having me, man. This means the world to me. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Before we move into what you're currently doing, as our listeners begin tracking their walk with the Strava app, would you mind sharing why you decided to join the Army back in 1973?
Oh, wow. Well, there was a lot going on. First of all, the draft was going on. We were in the middle of Vietnam, and my dad was a military officer. He was career military officer, National Guard and Army. And so Dad knew, and Dad had been actually in and out of the Pentagon. He was an area maintenance officer. So what he was doing is when vehicles would break down, he would get them back to the States and get them to the correct location to get them fixed. So he knew what was going on. It was no question what was going on in Vietnam. And I'll be straight up. My dad did not want me to go to Vietnam, period. He even told me, he said, when you go in for that urine test, you might want to think about doing this and put a little drop of blood in there. And my dad's passed, so I can get away with saying it. You know what I mean? So he was like, no, man, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to keep you out of Vietnam. And, he told me straight up, once I enlisted, I decided to go in on a delayed entry program in 73. And so what I did is I signed up. And so that way, when I went to basic training, I had rank. I was a PFC, right? So I was an E3 when I went in, which was great. Not only that, I could type. So literally, you'll love this. So when I got there, because what I was doing, let me go back to the question. Why did I do it? I was going to follow my dad's career. I went, okay, hey, National Guard, not a bad deal. You got good benefits. It's a solid job. That back then decisions were made because it was the industrial world. So, you got a good job, you had good benefits, and you could retire like my dad, who did pretty well. He retired with the income of a bird colonel. So, he was doing okay. So the bottom line is I went. In fact, what was beautiful, of course, when Dad told me to get there, he said, let me tell you something, young man. Don't keep your head down, your mouth shut, and don't volunteer for anything ever. Oh, okay, Dad, got it. Well, I'm in formation one morning, right? And all of a sudden, the drill sergeant said, any of you maggots know how to type? And I'm looking around, and nobody can type. And I'm thinking Radar O'Reilly and MASH, right? Mm-hmm. But my dad's going, don't volunteer. And all of a sudden I went, I can type, drill sergeant. Get out here, Albin. So I got out there and he kind of goes, dude, can you type? I go, yes, drill sergeant, absolutely. Where'd you learn how to type? Junior high school. Me and Ed Smith, we were the only two guys with the rest of the girls in typing class, and that's why I took the class. But I could type. I could type like 43, 44 words a minute. Go see Master Sergeant at Captain Koch's office. Boom, I went. The captain hired me. I'm in basic, okay? And the captain said, tell your drill sergeant to take you out of where you are and put you in that room. That's kind of like, by the barracks. By the way, I'm on Tank Hill at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So I moved out of the barracks where they were, and I pretty much started typing. I had to do all the other stuff, right? When they would go to the range and everything, anything you had to qualify, I went and did. But a lot of times I would drive the Jeep with the captain. Well, everybody in basic hated me. Well, you better be careful. Number one, I got rank on you. Number two, don't make me tell the captain that you're being a jerk. So anyway, bottom line, when I graduated from basic, the drill sergeant that is the one that asked me, does anybody know how to type? He said, he's getting, doing, either out, so they're sending me home. And the drill sergeant goes, you know what, Albin, you're the only recruit that I've ever seen that I feel I should salute. And he saluted me. I was like, okay. So anyway, I went in. Now, when I went in, I signed up with the idea of being in the National Guard. I was going to get a full-time job. Well, guess what happened? Nixon put a freeze on federal hiring. So my job went away. And I went, well, okay, well, then you need to discharge me. I don't want to be here. I signed up for a full-time job. And if you're not going to give me a full-time job, I'm not really interested in doing this weekend warrior thing. And so anyway, they agreed. They're like, okay, you're right. You're good. We promised you this and we can't deliver. Here's your honorable discharge. And so I went in a completely different direction after that.
Wow. So it was kind of in and out. You got to have a truncated basic experience. Um, and then you just transitioned right into a regular civilian again. What was that like?
It was okay. I loved it. I mean, I loved being in basic. I had a great time. I really did. I met some really cool dudes, and we're friends to this day. And they went on with their careers and things of that nature. And when I decided to sign up, I was 1A because I had been kicked out of high school, so there was no question about it. They were going to send my happy ass to Vietnam, and so to avoid all that, it just kind of all played out the way it did. And I missed the draft literally by just a couple of weeks because the war was coming to an end. We were pulling troops out of Vietnam at that point, and so yeah, and I missed it by the hair of my chinny chin chin, as they used to say. And but I lost a couple of cousins. I knew some other guys in high school that were older than me. They were 2-3 years older than me, who we lost in Vietnam. Their names on the wall in D.C. So yeah, that's just how it played out for me.
So after that time, I mean, post Vietnam era America, obviously with veterans, was not one that was very favorable for people that wore the uniform. And I can only imagine having such fond familial and relational connections with that community already, and having been a person that donned the uniform. There must have been a lot of conflict within what you saw in society and your values. Uh, what was life like during that time? Since you weren't necessarily in the military.
Wow, Danny, I don't know that anyone's ever asked me that question in that context before. And as soon as you asked me, I'm like, whoa, I was really torn. I knew the war was it was a war over oil, or at least that's what I believed at the time. We should have never been there. We lost how many? Was it 56,000 men and women? So there was that one side of me that went, no, no, absolutely not. I'm not going to support this war. And yet here's my dad and all these other friends and buddies that went over there. So, wow, I don't know. I was really torn now that I think about it. And I don't know that I ever really sat down and, you know what I mean? And really thought about that. So yeah, I was definitely somewhere in the middle of all that.
Yeah, because I just wonder, like, part of your journey that you list on your website and what you're very open about is you got sober from drugs and alcohol in 1988, and a lot of people, when we look at like what's going on with veterans today and the deaths by suicide, we often look at it as a new problem. However, even yourself, like you came dangerously close to being one of those numbers, regardless of how long you served. um, the the values were still there, the purpose was still there, and then it was gone, and you had about another 15 years between getting out and getting sober.
Yeah, I don't think any of the military part of it had anything to do with it. You know, because the bottom line is that I started drinking alcohol really early. You know, I was adopted when I was 5. A couple of months before I was born, my biological father, who I understand was a pilot in Korea, he had hit his head or hurt himself, and they put a plate in his head to save his life. Unfortunately, there was a ton of pain with that, and he used to complain to mom all the time. And one day, you know, 2 months before I'm born, he told mom he was going to the grocery store, and we never saw or heard from dad again. So we assumed he committed suicide because he, again, was in a lot of pain. So I grew up to a single mom. She had 2 boys, another cousin, and her mother, my grandmother. There were 6 of us living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, California. And so mom was working up the street at the Roosevelt Hotel. Well, my mom came out of, I think, the greatest generation of all time, all right, because they came through the Great Depression. They came through World War II. And what a lot of people fail to realize or even think about is that when the men were fighting the war, my dad was in Europe fighting the Nazis. My best friend's dad was in the Navy dealing with the Japanese in the Pacific, right? So while all that was going on and the men were deployed, guess what the women were doing? Everything. So this idea that, oh, can women do this and can women do that? Are you kidding me? Shut up already. My mom was known as Rosie the Riveter. She was working for McDonnell Douglas. She was building airplanes. And women were doing all of that. They were building jeeps and tanks and munitions. And again, they did everything. And without them, we would have lost that war without the women stepping up the way they did. And of course, they were pretty much almost all 99% of everything that was going on medically and the USO and all that was all women. So it was a beautiful thing. So I'm just saying, so my mom knew hard work. You know, she grew up in a family of 6 kids. And so she was working hard. She was trying to take care of us, right? But, you know, by the time I was 11, she just couldn't do it. She couldn't feed me. So she went to her older sister, Pat, and said, "Hey, Pat, I can't feed David. Will you and Bob adopt him?" And they said, "Yeah, absolutely." And they did. So that's how I got into the Albin family, right? Bob Albin was really my uncle. Pat Albin was my aunt. However, they grew up being mom and dad because I didn't know that I was adopted until I was 11 years old. I didn't know any of that. The first day of summer, 1964, right? I'm in the TV room. It's the first day of summer. You're a kid in Southern California. Guess where we're going? We're going to the beach. You know what I mean? You know what that's like when you're a kid. Mom comes in and goes, "David, come in the kitchen. We need to speak to you." And she sets me down at the kitchen. Dad's here. Mom's here. Mom puts her hand on my arm and with tears in her eyes, she goes, "David, what we need to tell you is we're not your parents." What? What do you mean? I mean, how can an 11-year-old kid even process that? They can't. Well, of course you're my parents. That's like taking somebody outside and saying, "Hey, the sky's not blue." Really? Looks pretty blue to me. So even my mom even went on to say, "By the way, your Aunt Dean, yeah, she's actually your biological mother." I don't even like her, right? And what I mean by that is anytime she was around me, she wanted to be right here, right next to me, holding me, kissing me, hugging me. Well, duh, I'm her son. But Danny, I didn't know that. I just thought she was my weird, affectionate aunt. It was never inappropriate, by the way. I want to make crystal clear of that. She was never like that. She just wanted to be around me as much as she could. Well, now I know why. So shortly after that, after they told me that, Bob and Pat both started drinking. And there was a lot going on back then. In November of 63, Kennedy had just been assassinated. My dad was in and out of the Pentagon. A lot of stuff was going on. All those missiles were in Cuba. They were dealing with the Russians. You know, we were one switch away from disaster, right? And Dad knew that. So maybe that's why he drank. Maybe it was because he told me he wasn't my dad or whatever. I don't know. All I know is they started drinking and it got ugly. My Pat was kind of a happy drunk. She'd pass out at the kitchen table. Bob, ooh, mean, not a nice guy. And so I started dealing with that. Well, one day they went to the grocery store and they left me home, which back in those days you did that all the time. It was no big deal. And I knew where the booze was and I wanted to know what the heck this stuff was. And they were hiding it in plain sight. So I went over and grabbed it and got a coffee cup, filled it up half full. Boom, down it went at 11 years old. And Danny, I never had a chance. I absolutely believe I was an alcoholic right on the spot because I started acting alcoholically as I know it today. I wanted to drink more. You know, when I drank it, it was like pouring rocket fuel in me. I went nuts. I went ballistic. And then it just, it progressed, obviously. And I got kicked out of high school when I was a junior, and I got married 3 times. And it wasn't until I was in my 3rd marriage when I woke up on June 8th and I said, that's it. We're done. I ain't doing this anymore. I'm out. And heroin and cocaine were part of that, a heavy part of it. And, I got up that morning on June 8th and rather than put a bullet in my head, which I was thinking really strongly about, but lucky for me, I had a moment of compassion because I remember thinking, you know what? Hold on a second here, pal. You take your life. Those 3 kids and their mom upstairs that you love and adore, you're going to ruin their life. You can't do that. Period. Find another way. So I called AA. And, I got this wonderful lady on the phone, man. I affectionately call her Madge to this day. She was answering the phone for intergroup, right? And I call her Madge because she talked like this, right? She had a really raspy voice. Well, she probably smoked 2 packs of Camel non-filters a day, right? But she was a gatekeeper, so you know how that is. It was her job to interview me, make sure that I was serious, and she was the one that would make a phone call and have somebody come pick you up. Boom, that's what she did, and I've been there ever since. So that's kind of how I got to that point with getting sober.
That's incredible. So obviously, like the getting sober journey is something deeply personal. We all have our story, and that's a whole nother episode that we can go on and on about. I mean, we have there's daily meetings happening multiple times a day throughout the world where people get to share those. So if you want to hear a sobriety story, um, no one is the same, and they're all incredible. But your story is incredible because you ended up going from the lowest of lows, having an eye-opening moment, to then going on and helping thousands and thousands and thousands of people. It became your life's mission to help people, and you did that through personal development with the likes of Tony Robbins. How did all of that come about, to taking people from I need help, I can't love anybody, I'm going to die if something doesn't change, to you can do this. You're way more capable of things than you ever imagined.
Absolutely. I have to credit it to insomnia because when I was getting sober, right, I was up late at night all the time. My sleep patterns were all over the place, right? And I was up late one night, 3 o'clock in the morning, and there he is. 1988, a young, vibrant Tony Robbins who owns the airways for with Gunthy Ranker and infomercials, and there he was. And he was selling a product that was called Personal Power. It was a 30-day program for total success, he called it. And it came in a big box full of these little white things called cassette tapes. And you played one every day for 30 days. And I bought the program. When I first heard Tony, I didn't like him. I thought he was a pompous ass, to be candid with you. He's out motivated, encouraging, he's young, he's vibrant. I wasn't vibrant. I wasn't encouraged. I was miserable. However, he said 2 things that got me. The first thing he said, we'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. And I went, okay, I get that one. That's why I drank and drugged, because I was either running from pain or trying to chase pleasure, right? But what really got me was, he said, let me tell you how humans make decisions. One of 2 ways. They make them out of inspiration or desperation. And I'm like, man, okay, I'm pretty desperate. Maybe I should listen to this dude. And so that's what happened. I called, I bought the program, I went through it, I did what he said. And then 7 years later, a buddy of mine called me on the phone and said, hey, Tony's coming to town. You're going with me. I'd got him into it. I loaned him my book and the program, and he said, come on, let's go. And so we did. And when he called me back, he made all the arrangements. He called me back and he said, oh, hey, we do this, drink a lot of water, bring snacks, have a good attitude, play full out, blah, blah, blah. Oh, by the way, we're going to be doing a firewalk. What? What is that? I don't know what that means. But in my brain, I'm going, no, hell no. That's a hard no for me. I'm not doing that. I don't know what that means, Danny, but I'm saying no to it because the word the word fire and walk in the same sentence don't resonate with me. And of course, all my decisions were being influenced by fear. And when I say fear, forget everything and run. That's how I processed it. And then, of course, we got to the event, and I'm holding out. I'm not going to do it. And then, Tony took the stage at like 2 when we, at the event that day, 4-day event called UPW, Unleash the Power Within, the Firewalk Experience. Next thing I know, it's after midnight. And all of a sudden, Tony goes, "Take your shoes off." I'm like, oh no, I'm not an idiot. I'm not doing that. I see where you're going with that, pal. Well, I got a problem. My buddy that I'm with at the event, he's taking his shoes off. We're in a room with 3,500 people. Guess what they're doing? Taking their shoes off. So now I'm like, I got a dilemma. What am I going to do? Not take my shoes off and everybody's going to know and point at me? And I'm like, calm down. This is what we'll do. When you get out there, take your shoes off. When you get out there, ditch your buddy and go hide in the back. Problem solved, right? I got it all figured out. No, I don't. That's what I did. By the way, when Tony's got you walking out there, he gets everybody to start clapping and chanting. You got 3,500 people going, yes, 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 right? I'm walking out there going, no, ain't going to happen. Well, it gets worse because when you get out there, he's got African drummers. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. How did I get myself into this mess? Anyway, I ditched my buddy and I went and hid in the back. Well, Tony Robbins knows that firewalking is literally probably the most powerful experience any human will go through. Period. He researched it. He knows it's been around by 1,000 years. He knows cultures all over the world use it for growth and weddings and rite of passage and when a boy becomes a man, when a girl becomes a woman. I mean, it's all over. The Phoenicians, the people of India, the Polynesians, the Hawaiians, the Portuguese, the Spaniards, the Indo-Europeans, the Native American Indians. Again, 1,000 years. So that's why Tony brought it into his events, because he knows he can create the paradigm shift. And if you don't do it, he knows you're going to miss out. He also knows there's people like me, and he knows where we are. We're hiding in the back. So what's he do? Well, the jerk he trains people to come find you. So I'm back there thinking I got it all figured out. Nope. Here comes a guy. He sees me, makes eye contact with me. Pretty sure Robbins trains him. Once you make eye contact, don't take your eyes off him. This dude gets 20 feet from me, Danny, and he goes, "Hey, man," because he's looking at me like I got something wrong with me. Right? He's like, "Hey, man, are you okay?" And of course, when we're not okay, what do? At least what I do. I lie, right? "Oh, I'm fine. Nothing to see here. Move along, pal." And he said, "Hey, man," he goes right for the kill shot, right? He goes, "Hey, man, you going to walk tonight?" And I'm like, "No, absolutely not." And he goes, "Hey, that's cool. No problem. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. But let me ask you a question. Wouldn't you at least like to watch?" And I thought, well, sure. Let's go watch these people burn their feet off. This will be entertaining. Well, he goes, "Look, man, you can't see anything from where you are. I'm 100 yards away. Here's what's going on. We're out in this big parking lot. They start a fire early in the day. They burn it for 10 hours. At the end of the night, it renders because they put cord after cord after cord after wood in it, right? So they got this big giant pile. Well, how you walk 3,500 people? You take a wheelbarrow over to that pit. You fill it with a shovel. You bring a wheelbarrow in between 2 lanes of sod, of grass. And it's a fire lane. It's about 3 feet wide, 18 feet long. They just take the coals with a flathead shovel. They sprinkle them on that grass. They pat them down. That's what you walk on, right? Well, it's going down. I'm back there. And so I went, okay, I'll go watch. I get in line. Okay. I admit it. I took the bait. Well, I'm kind of walking along and a guy comes up to me. Another stranger. To this day, I don't know either of these guys. And he said, "He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go." And pew, this guy just disappeared into the night. And I'm like, "What? Hey, hold on a second. What do you mean he knows when you're ready? When he says go, you go? What does that mean?" Right? So I'm kind of walking along and I can't see in front of me. Remember, I got 3,500 people in front of me. I can hear it. The drums are going. They're clapping, they're chanting. The people that have firewalked, once they get to the celebration end and they complete, they're jumping up and down and they're screaming. I mean, you talk about a dog and pony show, man. It's unbelievable. And so I get to a point where I can see at an angle. And now my focus is on that. I'm not even paying attention to what's going on in front of me. And the next thing I know, boom, guess where I am? I'm at the front of the line. And I'm like, how the hell did you get here? And I'm looking down, Danny, and those coals are glowing bright red. It's not a question, right? It's scary looking, I'll tell you. And the wheelbarrow's right there. You can feel the heat coming off, and I'm staring into the abyss. My heart's beating so fast, I know it's going to jump out of my chest. And there's a trainer standing right there. And all of a sudden he goes, eyes up. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Yeah, keep your eyes up. 10 hours in a room with Robbins, guess what he teaches you to do? Keep your eyes up. Don't stare at what you fear, right? Interesting. Stare at the celebration end. Keep your eyes there. So I've got my eyes up, and the trainer said, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I went, yes. And he went, stronger. And I went, yes. Well, he could tell. I'm not in a peak state. He knew it. So he goes, he got in my face and screamed at me. He's like, stronger. And I threw my hands up in the air and I screamed, yes. And he goes, go, go, go. Pooh. I took off. Well, remember the guy? He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I did. And so, right. So I get to the celebration end and they stop you. There's a couple of guys that catch you. And they're like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. And I started wiping my feet and I started celebrating. And it was like one of the most exhilarating moments of my entire life. I'm jumping up and down. I'm excited. And in that moment, you think you can do anything. It's like, okay, where's the bus? Let's go, people. Let's get on here. Let's go climb Everest. It's an exhilarating moment that I will never, ever forget. But where it got interesting was the next day, because this is a 4-day event. We do the Firewalk on day 1 that night. Day 2, we're all standing in the foyer getting ready to go into the venue. And I'm watching all these people. I've never seen or witnessed anything like it other than a Tony Robbins seminar. People were getting along humanistically unlike anything I'd ever seen or experienced. I'm watching them. They're laughing, they're crying, they're hugging, they're talking about the Firewalk, they're talking about their fears. It was absolutely beautiful. And so I'm like, so did we drink the Kool-Aid? Yep, we sure did. Well, long story short here, I'll shorten it up. I know we're on time here. I met one of Tony's trainers. And one of the trainers told me, we were just talking, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, what's it like being in this environment on a regular basis? He goes, are you kidding me? If you can get yourself here, do it. As a matter of fact, see those people over there with the black shirts, the pink writing on the back? Yeah. He goes, dude, they're volunteers. They're just like you. They were here last time, and now they've come back to help facilitate. So if you want to do that, when you go home, call Robbins. They'll send you an application, fill it out. I did. I got a letter in the mail weeks later that said, Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins companies. Boom. So in my application, they saw that I had a military background. They saw that I had a security background. They saw I lived on a farm. So they knew I knew how to use tools and log splitters and hatchets and kindling and the difference between oak and hickory and so on. Boom. They put me on the security team to help take care of Tony's celebrities, and they put me on the fire team. That all went down in like 95, 96. And then in 2003, Robbins offered me the captain's position. What that meant was I would be in charge of all Tony's Firewalks globally. So that was in 03. He even paid to have my kids go on the road because we were homeschooling at the time. And so that was 03. In 05, we went to London. That's where we set the world record. We walked 12,300 people. And when I say world record, I do want to clarify Guinness was not there. So, it wasn't documented. But it's the biggest firewalk in our planet's history. I know that for a fact. The only thing that's ever come close is another Robbins event. And then after that, to move this forward, in 2014, I'm driving down the road and Google calls me. Are you the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins? Yeah. What can I do for you? Well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. Really? Okay. Well, homeboy's a free agent. What you got? And that was it, man. That was the day. And they hired me. I went to Google. I've done Google twice. And when I was at Google, one of the executives sat me down and said, hey, listen, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but do you know why we hired you? I'm like, yeah, I got a pretty good guess. He goes, because you're the guy that can create the paradigm shift. We get it. Google understands what's going on here, right? Because what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. We wanted something that would take these 148 executives at their graduation and bond them in a way that they would remember it for a lifetime. And that's why we wanted the Firewalk experience. Well, the bottom line was I went, oh, okay, I get it. And I'm at the top of the heap. That's why they contacted me. So that's when Firewalk Productions was born in 2014 after Google. And pun intended, we've been going hot and heavy ever since.
And you guys do so many events. You've had so many different companies reach out to you that you've done this for. Why do you think, like, what do you think that it is about something like firewalking, something that pushes us beyond our perceived limits, that creates a life-changing experience?
Well, number one, you're doing it collectively, right? So you're doing it as a team, you're doing it as a group. So that creates that magical relationship, right? It's kind of, think near death experience. Anybody knows what that's like? Anybody that's in that with you as a group all experience the same thing, right? Go look at Flight 1549, US Air, Miracle on the Hudson, and Sully, and all those people. I happen to know one of my best friends was on that flight, so I know that camaraderie. And he even said to me, he goes, dude, the camaraderie that we have is very similar to firewalking. And so I got it. So yeah, it's like, why would Google call me to create that experience? They know. They wanted that bonding experience. So, I mean, I've been traveling, the world and been doing this for a long time. And every once in a while, I'm somewhere in an airport and they go, hey, Dave Albin, hey, man, how you doing? Right? They love me. There's a bond between us because of the Firewalk. So they know that. And again, that's like, that next day after the Firewalk, I watched that. I saw 3,500 people in that foyer, and we were all like brothers and sisters. And the night before, we didn't know a darn thing about each other. We probably didn't know anything about each other at that moment other than we had all experienced an incredible experience the night before. So yeah, it's there. And that's why cultures all around the world have used firewalking for that purpose. It works. It's that's the bottom line.
I love, I didn't really have a full perception of what it could be because, there's a lot of challenges that push people on an individual basis. But I love that you talk about it's a bonding experience within a community. And I understand, after doing this now for over 20 years, 10 years on your own or with your own company, not never on your own. I understand that you're starting to do more and more work with veterans and first responder communities. What inspired you to start pursuing that? And how do you think your work will impact that community?
Well, I was on a podcast. And at the end of the podcast, we were talking sidebar. And the host asked me, she said, David, have you ever done a firewalk for veterans? And I said, specifically? And she said, yeah. I go, no, why? She goes, well, we have 200 veterans. And as you may know, the suicide rate is through the roof. And I said, yeah, it's like 22 a day, right? She goes, no, it's much higher than that. That's only if they leave a note. And I'm like, like 45 to 50 a day, they think it is. And so that, that can hit you hard, especially when you're a vet or in your family's, got a lot of vets and you lost a lot of people in Vietnam and stuff. So I said I would, she's like, we think because of if you use the Firewalk experience and you're 30 some years into personal development, we think you can help restructure these people's purpose, which will save their life. Because that's why they take their life, right? Why does a vet take their life? Because they get deployed, they work together as a unit. There's a lot of purpose that surrounds that. They see horrendous stuff, and then they all know something's going to happen one day that they dread, and that is they have to go home. Because when it goes home, it all goes away. Now it's fragmented. Now they don't have that camaraderie to look at every day and be part of. So depression seeps in, their purpose drops. Next thing you know, we're losing them. And so I got it immediately. I'm like, well, okay, so reinstall purpose. So when I went to bed that night after talking, I woke up in the middle of the night and I said, it's Operation Do No Harm. It was like clear as a bell. It's like 30 years of doing this. It's like, this is the direction you have to go now, Dave. Yeah, corporate America has been really good to you. You can still do some of that, but now you want to go out to corporate America and say, hey, how'd you like to save 300 veterans' lives? By the way, when I woke up that night, I also realized there were 3 other categories for a total of 4, right? Category 1, veterans. This is all high suicide rates. Category 2, first responders, specifically mostly firefighters. Category 3, single moms. Category 4, abused and neglected children. And so, boom, there it is. Well, we have our first event. It's already scheduled to Modesto, California. I was on another podcast. And Ed Pericott, who's the president of the Rotary in Modesto, said, Dave, we want to hire you. We want to do this. My Rotary wants to sponsor this event in Modesto. Boom, here we go. So the beauty is that we have like 4 or 5 corporate clients who are coming. One of them, C3 Insurance, is actually helping sponsor. They're going to take care of all the production. They're bringing in professional videographers and filming people. They're going to take care of all that. My friends here at the American Weed Company, they're coming. They're doing the same thing. They've created a strand, a peptide, if you will, that has been specifically engineered and grown for veterans. So they're working closely with the Veterans Administration, trying to navigate through all that paperwork and get it approved. And then we've got some other corporate clients that, are on board with it as well. One of them being the Zippo Lighter Company. If you're going to light a fire, use a Zippo for the Firewalk, right? So I love these guys. They're actually making a lighter. They took the 1941 replica that they gave away during World War II, which my dad had one and carried in Europe. And they're going to powder coat it black, and then they're going to laser in their Operation Do No Harm. My friends over at doTERRA, the essential oil company, they're involved. So what I'm able to do now is go to corporate America and say, okay, we'll bring the event to your city. You sponsor it. We'll do all the work. We'll do all the heavy lifting, and you get all the credit. You get the limelight, and everybody gets to look at XYZ Corporation and say, look what they did. They just did an event for 300 veterans with the intention of saving their lives. So the beauty for them is if they get their employees involved, which I will help take care of, then those employees will have that feeling of, wow, look what we did. Look what my company did. I work for a company that just promoted this and saved, maybe 300 kids or 300 single moms or firefighters or police or veterans. So, it's a beautiful thing. So Operation Do No Harm is coming.
I think that's going to be an awesome opportunity, especially for a lot of these at-risk communities, to really realize the reach of support that they have. Because so much of what we've been doing since we started this podcast and talking about it is we hear a lot of people say, you're not alone, reach out, call for help. What our podcast has done is it's highlighted people in every single community, yourself included, that says, hey, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you overcome that challenge. I'm here to let you know that there's hope for the next day. And my final question for you, Dave, is for those that are struggling, for those single mothers, those children that have experienced childhood trauma, that have also grown into adults, those veterans, those first responders that are struggling with their mental health and are on the verge to dying by suicide. Do you have a message of hope for those that are currently battling their demons?
Yeah, absolutely. Let us help you find your purpose. You have a purpose. We all do. So that's, and there's people that care. There's a lot of us. And, we always hear, we tell them, hey, reach out to us and we'll help you. Well, wait a minute. How about we reach out to them? Are we calling them every day? Are we checking in with these people? And here's the beauty. So if you are in one of those categories, you're a mom or you've got a kid or you've got a vet or you've got a first responder, then here's the thing. We're going to recruit you because we want you to be involved. One of the things I'm going to do, I'm so glad you asked that. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to have all the people that come to the Firewalk in one of those categories take an oath. I'm going to tell them, look, I'm going to take you out here in the parking lot in a minute. We're going to do a 1,000-year-old ritual. This is an incredible experience. However, you have to promise me something. You have to do no harm. So please stand up, put your right hand in the air, and I'm going to have them take an oath. Now, the other thing we're going to do, right? So they're going to have to promise to do no harm. The other thing is, we get a medallion in AA, right? On that first day. Then we get one in a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 18 months, and then every year thereafter, right? Well, we're going to give these people a medallion as well. And it's going to say something similar, right? It may have the serenity prayer, the life itself be true, Operation Do No Harm, whatever, but it's going to be a medallion, something they could carry in their pocket. One of the things I'm going to do what my sponsor taught me to do. Take it out of your pocket, Put it in your hand, and I want you to squeeze it as hard as you possibly can. Doesn't feel good, does it? Feel that pain? It's very uncomfortable, isn't it? Yeah, it sure is. And guess what? If you take your own life, do you have any idea how much pain you're going to inflict on your friends and family? So keep that in mind. And so, you know what I mean? So to do that, so they'll take an oath. They'll have the coin. They'll have possibly a lighter from Zippo. I'm going to take them through a whole process at the event. They're going to do a board break as well, right? So I'm going to have them do a martial arts thing. So I'll have them write on the board. They'll write something on front of the board they want to move towards, something on back they want to move away from. I'll have them write anybody's name on the board that they're in conflict with. Meaning, if forgiveness and reconciliation is part of that relationship, it ends tonight. You know, and you know in AA what we do with that, right? We make amends. We go back. We say we're sorry. We get our side of the street cleared up. So we'll do that, and then I'm going to create the rite of passage. I'm going to have them write anybody's name on the board that they've lost. So that creates the rite of passage. So then we'll take them outside. We'll have board break stations. Boom! They'll break the board. We'll circle them back. They'll firewalk. They'll get to throw their board into the fire. This is all on video and being photographed. And then after that, I put them in a circle. And then what I do is I do what's called the heart hug. And so what I do is I say, I want you to look across the circle and find somebody that you don't know. Make eye contact with them. Don't take your eyes off them. Now, go to that person. And so while you're standing there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to hug the right way. We're taught to go this way. No, go the other way. I want my heart on top of your heart. So I get them in that position, and then I have them close their eyes, and I have them take 3 to 4 deep diaphragmatic breaths, really deep, and I have them hold it. And while they're holding it, guess what happens by the time they get into that second breath? Their hearts calibrate. So now I'll do that maybe 6 times, and now I got the whole group and their hearts are all beating at the same time. So boom, the community is created, their hearts calibrated, they're all on the same page, and then when we bring them back in, they're going to have to promise to help go bring other brothers and sisters, whatever category, kids, whatever, and bring them back into the environment. And so there's the purpose, right? You know, why do they give a service person, a vet, a dog? Because they have to take care of the dog. Purpose. So there's the answer. I learned that a long time ago from Mr. Robbins. So yeah, we're dialed in, man. We're going to need a lot of help. And I want to thank you, Danny, and Leanne for, bring me on your podcast and letting me share this with your audience. And, we want as much help as we can get. And whatever that means, some of just pray for us and connect with us and support us and do all that. But, others, I'll guarantee you that every listener right now has somebody in their community that they could go to and say, hey, you know what? I heard a podcast the other day, and there's this dude doing firewalks to save veterans, first responders, moms, single moms, and kids that have been abused. We ought to look into this. So that's my story, Danny, and I'm sticking with it.
I appreciate it, Dave. And thank you for helping others find their purpose. For those that are interested in reaching out to you or getting more information, where can they find and connect with you, Dave?
Oh, it's real simple. I'm very accessible. Just go to our website. It's Firewalk Adventures with an S, firewalkadventures, all one word.com. Everything's there. Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, my calendar, all the contact information. By the way, we do have an academy for anybody that would want to learn how to do and create these incredible life-changing experiences. I do it once a year. I do it up here in the Appalachian Mountains in the northwestern part of the state of North Carolina. We do a very small group. So you come up here, you spend 5.5 days with me in these beautiful mountains, and I train you how to do and create all these experiences so you can go back in your respective communities or your own companies or whatever, and you'll be able to do it yourself. That's called the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy, and that's on the website. You can find that there too.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today, Dave, on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Thanks, Danny. Really appreciate you, man. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, remember you can catch the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast on Reach Across America Radio, ready for you on platforms like iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and the TuneIn app.